what happens when all of our comfort, all of our security is gone. We're deep in despair, we're deep in sickness, and someone comes with an answer. Stay tuned. My name is Father Mike Manning. This is a program called Power of Love. One of the things that we experience in our life oftentimes is deep despair, and it's a despair that gets deep down into our souls, beyond our hearts and beyond our minds. And it's something like an animal that can kind of constrict us and hold us in a deep control of which we cannot escape. And we're looking for things that can maybe help us. We might flick on the television and hope that there's a funny show, or we might talk with someone and hope that maybe by conversing with someone, we can turn that around. But there's another reality, and it's a gift from God that can open the door to getting down into the heart and healing something that is very deep and painful in our lives. And that's the gift of music. Music is a powerful instrument in our lives, and it's a strange instrument. As I kind of analyze music, it might take something very simple like a little phrase. I think oftentimes of Beethoven's Fifth. It goes like boom, 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 boom. And it does that again in a different way. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. And it starts shooting all around a little phrase, and in a way that Beethoven's genius was able to bring to us, we listen to a symphony of little melodies that have sound and silence, and suddenly we are lifted up from where we are to like a new world. It's a gift in music to raise us up beyond where we are, to find victory over things that overwhelm us. I think the Bible is filled with wonderful stories of music and the power of music. Whenever you want to have the Psalms, you find again and again in the Psalms reference to music, and they were music pieces that were put to music by harp and singing. But one of the greatest stories is the story of King Saul. Remember Saul? Saul was the first king of the Jewish people. And at first, he was a great, great warrior. He was a great leader. But then things started to turn around. And we find, as we read through the Bible, that Saul became overwhelmed with sadness, overwhelmed with despair. And he couldn't find any meaning in life. And in this deep depression that he had, he heard that there was a young man by the name of David, that could play the harp, or maybe even the guitar, if you will, and you want to get a comparison. And he would call in this young man to play for him while he was sitting there, and somehow the music was able to touch his heart and to touch his life and lift him to a sense of peace and security. Today, we're going to touch that security. If we want to change the world, we've got to be willing first to listen to what God is speaking in our hearts of our talents and goodness, and then be able to express that. And I believe that the more we can wrestle and get down to the truth of whatever God has given us, and that we can now manifest it, that is part of God's dream of getting out and touching the world and changing the world. I have a delightful guest. Lysa, thank you very much for being with us.
My pleasure.
Does that resonate with you at all, with the deep desire to move beyond just perhaps the ordinary to something that might even affect the world?
I agree. I agree that if you are blessed with a talent, that it is your duty to share it, particularly in a way that moves people's heart, that enables them to open up and to do their own kind of healing, and to to share, to do the work and to share what it is you can do if you're so fortunate.
A lot of us have talents, but sometimes the talents can be very selfish. You know, it can be, oh, it's mine. And it can be a source of power. It can be a source of money. It can be a source of pleasure that becomes very selfish. And yet, if talents can start to be able to reach out to others, ooh, then they start to blossom. And then this idea of even being able to change the world becomes a fact. And I think that really is what Jesus wants us to do. I think as I look through the Bible, I find again and again his drive with talking to the ordinary people that he spoke to was to see goodness in them and then to allow that to arise. You have a very great gift. You have a musical gift. When did you find out about this musical gift in your life?
Oh, ever since I was a baby. My mother liked to say that she played classical music or classical guitar music for me as a child in a crib, because she read in Reader's Digest that your child will become musical. So she likes to take credit for that. But I just, ever since as long as I can remember, I could always hear music, and I would just love to listen to my parents' albums, and it was really, truly in me. In a baby seat in the car, I could feel the rhythm. I could feel it like a language that I could speak before I could even speak words. So it was truly in me all along. But it was about 7 or 8 years old I got my first guitar. And
Whoa.
I just picked up on it right away, and I've been going ever since.
Wow. So the guitar, but we're looking
yes,
in back of you. We've got this little wing back there.
It's a funny guitar. That was the earliest of stringed instruments, the folk harp, the Celtic harp. And originally all instruments came from that instrument in the first place. So.
And that's what I think David was playing in
right.
the court of Saul. He was playing a harp in this.
That's what many people think of when they see that instrument.
Well, one of the things that I wish you could share with us also is, tell us a little bit about your life, and maybe could you give us a little bit of where you were, and then how did you come to perhaps a turnaround? And then perhaps this openness that you're using your gifts and you're touching the lives of many people.
Sure.
How did you move into that?
Well, as a musician and in the entertainment industry, it's pretty driven and pretty competitive. And I started playing the harp when I was about 21. I'd already been a professional rock musician, actually playing bass in various bands that played in clubs. And so I was very set that I wanted to, make it, be famous, buy houses, and do all these things that the normal mainstream musician might be after. Which might be
kind of a selfish thing.
Exactly, sure. But, well-intended, and discovering the harp and playing the harp allowed me to get a glimpse into more beautiful ways of sharing music. I would be playing in most beautiful sacred times of a new birth or a wedding, or even someone would have me play while they ask someone to marry them. So I got to get in.
Really?
Oh, sure.
Oh, I love that.
Sure, and restaurants and all the normal things. But basically, you're just putting beauty out there for people to enjoy. So that was sort of my introduction to other realms of music.
So some guy calls you up and says, I love it.
I'm behind the park bench and start playing just as he pulls out the ring.
I love it. I love it.
She can't say no then.
That's great.
And also for, memorial services and things like that. So I really got a glimpse into the sacred use of music at that time. And I became more progressed, writing my own music and recording albums and trying to make records that really touched people's heart and did something to sweeten an atmosphere at home, to just, I was going there already, but the real turning point was in 1999 when we all witnessed the tragedy at Columbine High School.
Oh, yes.
Little did I know. I mean, I was so upset. I couldn't stop watching TV. I couldn't sleep. It was just so troubling me. I couldn't get my mind off it for so many days. And little did I know that that was going to be the turning point of my whole direction of what was valuable and meaningful to me. Because as I was really suffering, a miracle call came from a harp center here in Southern California that said, we just got a call from one of the Columbine families that said they're using your Love and Peace CD to soothe their daughter, who was one of the first critically wounded students at Columbine. She was paralyzed from the waist down. She's in critical care. She's not sleeping unless we put on your Love and Peace CD.
Wow.
So here I was, just so broken up, and this miracle call came that I could not believe it. And they just wanted us to know how helpful my music was.
Wow.
And it so happened I was scheduled to tour through Denver 2 weeks later. So I met up with one of the family members where I was playing, and I said, well, I have so much more music. I want to give you all my records. I want to give you everything. And I wanted to also ask, can I come to the hospital and play? I'd never done that before except for my grandmother. And she was shy to ask me that too, and at the same time we both
She was
said
looking
it.
for it.
Yes,
Yes,
I will. So I got the most incredible insight to what goes on there at this very raw time at the hospital. I went to the hospital with my harp. I didn't know what was going to happen.
How long after the incident was this?
It was probably about 3 to 4 weeks, I would say.
Oh
yeah.
my.
So the family was still encamped at the hospital, Swedish hospital in Littleton, and the families of the critically wounded students there were encamped in the various classrooms 24/7, families waiting. She was in and out of trouble all the time. Every day was different, and she had been shot 4 times in the back and her spinal cord. It was just a terrible situation. And so the family was, you know, it was just 24/7, and people would bring them casseroles, and family would come in and out, but they were just waiting all the time. So I went in with my harp, and I didn't know what was going to happen, and they invited me into the room, and they wanted to hear me play, and they also had said, Anne-Marie was her name, she was sleeping, and finally she was sleeping, so I wasn't going to see her at that time, but I stayed with the family for like 8 hours in the room, played music, and something about the simplicity and the purity of the harp and its music enabled them to open and share in a way that they hadn't done yet. And the brother who was also there at the high school when it happened was able to tell his father what he saw and how it all went. For the first time he was able to speak of it. The father was shedding tears for the first time.
In the midst of your playing the
yes,
music?
I would play for a while, they would rest, they would pray together, and then they would speak, and then I would play again. And I realized it was beyond anything I ever dreamed of. It was the most meaningful day of my life to think I actually was able to give something that assisted this unusual, incredibly traumatic situation in begin the process of sharing and healing. And I just stayed all day long, and the whole time they were saying, oh, Anne-Marie would have loved this. She played the piano and a little guitar. Oh, I wish she could have seen this. And I was just thinking, gosh, this was the most important day of my life so far. And I've played fancy concerts, I've toured, I've done all this stuff, and nothing held a candle to how I floated out of that place.
A young girl is sleeping in bed. And
exactly. And so I went home on the plane. I was thinking, man, what if I could get her a little lap harp, and then maybe she can learn to play too, and that would, you know, help her get through this long period of healing time. So I went home, went on the harp chat list, and told all the harpists of my experience and said, I'm thinking of getting a little harp. Anyone want to pitch in? Maybe we can get it engraved for her. Well, harpists from all over the world came. Money came floating, and we got her the most beautiful, full-size Celtic harp that you could ever imagine.
Wow.
And it was a surprise presenting it to her. And she was resisting sitting up. It was time for her to be sitting up by this time.
Oh my God, the pain must have been excruciating if you have bullets in your spine.
When the harp came, she sat up. She had more reason to sit up to learn to play the harp. And so suddenly I feel like a veil came over my eyes and everything became color, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. I needed to put my energy into using music to empower others to create their own music, to aid in their own path in healing. So the next thing I did was, and I had quite a collection of harps because you get endorsements and companies make and send me harps so that I will play them, like athletes in tennis shoes. It's the same thing with harps. So I've accumulated these harps. I brought them.
I've been waiting for someone to send me television cameras, but they don't do that. But that's all right.
We'll work on that one.
Listen, we're going to be coming right back.
Okay.
I need to get back because I want to hear. This is intriguing. We're gonna, if you're gonna stay tuned, we're gonna get a chance to hear what the next chapter is from this deep experience of this child of Columbine. Please stay tuned. Tell me a little bit more now about the next chapter. You've had an experience of using your talent and using it in a secular way. Using it in a way that is a blessing to others, but probably even more satisfying to yourself and your goals.
Yeah, I felt a new sense of purpose and a sense of being able to offer something of so much more substance. And so after I'd had the experience with a young lady at Columbine, I came back and I wanted more of it in my life. So I took all my harps to my grandmother's rest home. and I do a little concert, and I have all the harps lined up and tuned in, and all the
Like,
little old
like
people.
how many harps?
Well, now I've got about 19 harps.
Get out of here.
They're not all this big, though. Some of them are
harps.
small, and they sit in your lap. But I line up all the harps, and I tune them all up, and I do a little concert, and I thought, I'm going to really have to coax these very old ladies in wheelchairs to come and play the harps. And I say, now, don't be shy. It's all okay. The harps are strong. They're fun to play. You can just strum on the strings, and it sounds beautiful. Now, come on, don't be shy. And they just wheeled over there as fast as they could and started winging on the strings and making all this joyful sound. They just woke up like really something. There was smiles.
Isn't that neat?
So I did it at another rest home. Same thing. And I say, okay, I know this just pleases me so much to share this that I started writing letters to, and I made a list of all the hospitals, shelters, and elderly homes in the area. And the very first one, by virtue of alphabetical order, was City of Hope. And I didn't know that much about it, but you probably do. It's one of the biggest cancer researchers out here in Duarte. And I thought I'd do a different, I still tour a lot, but I can do a different place every month. But City of Hope had other ideas. They loved the idea so much and the story so much. I went in and met with them and played the harp and told them the story that they said, we don't want this just once. What if we start a whole program, and what if we had money? What would you do? And I thought, well, we'd buy harps for the patients to play, we'd have concerts, we'd have music in the lobbies, in the chemo rooms. I had to think fast on my feet, and I don't know how it all came out, so we know it was coming from somewhere else. But, and that was 3.5 years ago, so we've had a program going ever since. We keep getting grants because of the success of it. So we have concerts and workshops in the main lobby that patients come down from their rooms, and they listen to the concert, and then they join in on the harps. They can check out harps from the music library and just play in their beds. We have harps in the daytimes playing in the lobbies and the waiting rooms, what's normally a very stressful place, but you have this gentle live acoustic music happening, changes the ambience completely, gives it a beautiful atmosphere. Quite often we get called in to play if somebody's passing on from here, and that's very, very special and important work as well. But I've had the opportunity to make friends with many people who are going through a long cancer battle, and it has enriched my life beyond anything I could have ever imagined.
Where does Jesus come into all this experience?
Well, I feel the presence everywhere I go. It is the music. It is why the music's here. Sometimes there's just no words to articulate love, and so the music can pick up where words leave off. Mm-hmm. I get exposed to a lot of different people of a lot of different spiritual bases, and some people are even questioning where they're at the time because they're dealing with such a harsh thing. Very often I'm, in close contact with spouses who are just angry and sad. So I generally let the music open up the doors to their heart, whatever needs to come in. Quite often, I just go in and play. And
tell me about this. I'm curious about you do a concert out in the lobby, but how do you get into the rooms, and how do you
lobby
deal with
concerts
people?
are in the evening, and they're invited, and they're formal performances.
Yes.
In the daytime, usually you just sit out in the hallway and wait till they invite you, or a minister may come and ask you to come to a certain
you're kind
room.
of sitting there strumming.
By the nurse's station, you're just letting music float down the halls, and the patients have the freedom to hear or not hear, and usually all the doors open, and sometimes they even come out, and sometimes you're invited in. If a patient is not conscious, you may be invited in by a family member. And as well as celebrations of all the people who have passed on, and there's all sorts of reasons to bring music in to the hospital, and it's being more and more recognized that what a valuable investment of time and energy it is to put the music out. It's so soothing and it's so comforting. And now I'm also playing every week in the intensive care unit at Kaiser Hospital out in Woodland Hills. They've just opened up to it, and the nurses are so much more relaxed, and the patients and the families, they say that the blood pressure just goes down and the complaints stop, and it's just incredible. And I enjoy the diversity because on weekends I play for thousands of people, and during the week I might play for one person behind a curtain and never even get to speak words with them. I just send this one message, and the message is of comfort, however they choose to receive it. And it's just wonderful that that is the most pleasing of all, anonymous for one person.
Can you tell me a little bit about, kind of philosophically or artistically speaking, what it is about music? Why does music enter in and change our lives? I'm confused by that sometimes.
Well, I think it's one of the many great mysteries, but I think there's so many things attached to words that no matter what, it gets segmented off into to mean something that people, because it's the universal language is what it is, I believe.
Yes.
And it's so primitive and so old, and humans just have such a love for that universal language because it's one that we can all understand. And the simplicity of this particular instrument is just really pure. And when people who buy my records are of all walks of life. It's really wonderful. And I usually take my harp and play in places where they do not expect to have harp music, because you can preach to the choir all day, but I actually like to go into, I play as a street performer in Austin, or all different, Disney World, and all these different places with all these different kinds of people, and I just love, when I was in a rock band and I started playing harp, I played it in the rock band, interrupted the show to play a few minutes on harp and watch all the sweaty kids bouncing around just freeze with their mouths open, you know. I've played the harp behind biker bars, and the bikers are enthralled, you know, and it's just universal that something so pure and so real touches everybody's heart. And as a result, I got so deep into City of Hope, I didn't even get my record done and turn it in for the record company. And I just did it in a hurry. I wrote lullabies for the patients outside of their rooms and just turned it in.
For your album?
For my album. I usually spend a whole year working it and orchestrating and all this. Yes. But I hadn't done it because I got so wrapped up in City of Hope that instead I wrote this little record outside the patient's door of just lullabies. Just very little production, turned it in, and the record went to #6 on the Billboard music charts. And it so surprised me, so I didn't care, and I didn't know it was coming from a whole other place. I wasn't trying, I was just making it, this is something I'll give to the patients when I leave, so they can have something to keep playing. Yes. So the intention there was coming from a whole different place, and then it shows. So now I speak to other musicians and telling them to get their intention, tell my story, and I have my little photos and my images, and I play during the images. I've developed a really fun thing that way. But inspires other musicians to get clear on why they're doing it. And once they call, you know, God into their lives, they'll be amazed at the new flow and momentum that comes along when their intention is far more clear.
Why do we need artists in the world?
Gosh, I think it just balances out the strife, you know, the beauty. It's the same as prayer, the same as all the beautiful things that we have. It creates the big balance, I think. Promise, hope, comfort.
thank you very much for sharing the gift of who you are, and thank you for sharing in a way that is changing the world. And may you always be confident in that.
Thank you.
Lord, thank you very much for this beautiful gift, and thank you for the challenge of music. May we open our hearts to music, whether we play an instrument or we listen to the beauty of artists. And may we find you, Lord, as we touch the depth of that truth. And may Jesus' love for you always make you smile. God bless. Thank you. Good job.